Right now, Twitter is being dragged into court by victims of ISIS terrorism, claiming that Twitter aided their acts. The lawsuit, which is titled Kane versus Twitter, has been brought forward by Anne Cameron Kane, whose husband and her husband's sister was killed in the 2016 Brussels airport bombings, and Beatriz Gonzalez, the mother of Nohemi Gonzalez, who was killed in the 2015 Paris attacks. The families are seeking compensation from Twitter, and an exact amount which will be determined in court. Essentially, their argument is that Twitter is partly responsible for these attacks because it allowed ISIS members to communicate and broadcast their message. Now, this is an exact statement that was given by Nitsana Darshan Litnier, who is their lawyer. This is the first lawsuit that details how Twitter has played a key role in making Islamic State the most formidable terrorist organization in the world today, and how the Islamic State uniquely used Twitter in the context of two of the most serious attacks to take place in Europe recently. Twitter is unique in that it has adamantly refused to block terrorists from using its services, citing freedom of tweeting, even if this directly spells mass murder. This is a very strong indictment from the lawyer and from the families of the victims. It should also be noted that Twitter, along with Facebook and Google, are facing similar lawsuits from families killed in the June 2016 massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. And this all raises a very interesting question. How culpable is social media in incidents like these? Because if people are using that service to communicate, it would certainly show that in some way they did aid the attack. However, we must also acknowledge that Twitter cannot be everywhere at the same time. It cannot read every single tweet and every single direct message that takes place on its service. It cannot know where anything is at any given time. It can only review what has been reported and flagged. However, given that, I do believe Twitter does have responsibility for blocking any kind of terrorist activity. For example, ISIS members communicating with each other or putting out public messages in support of attacks upon the West, etc. So it's interesting because people have reported these accounts, and in fact, the hacktivist group Anonymous did release a whole ton of Twitter accounts that were being used by ISIS to coordinate attacks and coordinate propaganda efforts. Twitter simply responded by essentially attacking Anonymous, essentially accusing them of bullying, which is frankly nonsense in my eyes, and it frankly baffles most people why Twitter would even do this. However, I do feel that there is something else going on here that we are not aware of. I sincerely doubt Twitter endorses ISIS or anything like that. I believe Twitter is trying to put forward a freedom of speech kind of argument that perhaps that they feel this would be opening the door to attacks against other groups, some of which they may deem as legitimate. Where do you draw the line in freedom of speech? Well, I would think that line is right around ISIS. I mean, there's very little that can be construed as fuck ISIS. I mean, there's no good thing about ISIS whatsoever. You can't in any way, shape, or form think of them as a positive force unless of course you are in charge of U.S. foreign policy. Then you might have a statement or two positive to make about them or affiliated groups. But as for holding a social media company responsible, culpable for communications between terrorist groups, it should be very interesting to see how this plays out in court, because there is precedent for not blaming social media for the content that is posted on it. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.